Picture this. You've got these two giant countries just squaring off, America and Russia, both of them looking up, wanting to be the ones to touch the stars. And well, Russia makes the opening move. They put a satellite up there in space, and then a person. And America, honestly, they were scared. They were totally losing this massive space race, and you could feel the heavy tension everywhere. Right until the president looked up at the night sky. He makes this wild, totally brave promise. He tells everyone they are going to land on the moon, and he just drops this strict 9-year deadline on them. 9 years. You know, they had absolutely no idea how to even build a moonship yet. Nothing. They had to invent incredibly hard things entirely from scratch. We're talking pulling powerful new rocket engines and super smart flying computers into existence just to even make it possible. And what they actually came up with was this absolute monster machine called the Saturn V. I mean, this thing was taller than an actual skyscraper, just packed with millions of tiny moving parts, and every single piece had to work perfectly. A single tiny mistake meant a massive explosion. Launch day was basically like trying to ride a skyscraper made of controlled fire into the sky. It was exactly that dangerous. And you know, you've got to remember just how far away the moon is. If you could somehow drive a car there, it would literally take you many months. So they needed some highly specific gear. 3 men lived in this tiny room called the command module. But to actually land on the surface, they built this incredibly fragile, weird ship wrapped in gold foil called the lunar module. Add in these totally sealed spacesuits to survive the boiling heat and freezing cold out there in the dark, and, well, they were set. But testing all this stuff, it was dangerous. The crew was sitting inside their module during a routine ground test, and a sudden fire broke out. It was just terribly sad. 3 incredibly brave astronauts lost their lives that day. The engineers were completely devastated, so they stopped everything. They tore the whole spaceship apart and redesigned it from the ground up, building much safer, stronger doors and getting rid of anything that could easily catch fire. When they finally got back to flying, they pushed so hard. They started by sending up the giant Saturn rocket totally empty, and it shook perfectly with all that extreme power. Then they did human test flights, practicing how to live in zero gravity right near Earth. And it all led up to this wildly daring Christmas trip, where they actually flew away from Earth, heading straight out into the dark, toward the moon. When they flew behind that rocky moon, they entirely lost radio contact. The whole world was just waiting down here in this heavy, quiet fear. It felt exactly like sailing a tiny wooden raft off the edge of the map into pure darkness. But then, their loud voices finally broke through the static, and looking out their small window, they saw our beautiful blue planet. They called it a tiny, fragile marble floating there in the dark. So after some more practice flights getting really close to the moon rocks, everything was finally set for the ultimate test. Millions of people were just glued to their television sets for the biggest countdown in history. Fire exploded from the giant Saturn rocket, shaking the ground for miles around and just crushing the new crew with this incredible heavy weight as they lifted up into the blue sky. The giant rocket parts eventually fell back down into the ocean, leaving just the small command ship to float peacefully out into deep space. For 3 whole days, it was this quiet journey. The men checked their computers constantly as the gray moon loomed huge in their window. And finally, Neil and Buzz climbed into the little landing ship and flew away, leaving Michael behind in the main ship to just wait for them. As that landing ship fell toward the moon, things got really intense. Warning alarms suddenly started blaring loudly. The tiny computer was thinking too hard and getting totally overwhelmed, steering them right toward a bunch of sharp rocks. But Neil, he stayed so calm under all that pressure. He actually took manual control of this falling ship, maneuvering it completely by hand. And their fuel tank was almost entirely empty at this point. Flying that manual ship on fumes was honestly like trying to balance a plate on a broomstick falling from the sky. But Neil searched for a smooth, flat spot, and he gently brought it down until the metal feet finally touched alien dirt. When he radioed back, all that dangerous flying was over, and the whole Earth just cheered. Neil opened up that small metal door, climbed down the long ladder, and planted his white boot straight onto the dark gray powder. Out there in the blinding bright sun, he spoke that famous special sentence, talking about taking a small step, meaning it was a giant leap for everyone. Buzz climbed down right after him, and the two of them just bounced high into the air on the surface, entirely surrounded by a pitch-black sky. They got straight to work.
They planted a bright wire flag that stayed perfectly still since there's zero wind up there. They gathered up all these heavy moon rocks that were totally packed with secrets about our solar system. They placed down special science tools to measure tiny moonquakes and bounce light back to Earth. And then, after a couple of hours in those heavy suits, they climbed back into the ship completely exhausted.
Getting out of there was a wild trick, too. The top half of the landing ship blasted straight off the moon, leaving the bottom half in the dirt forever. The engine worked perfectly right away. They met back up with Michael, rejoined the main ship, threw the dirty landing ship away, and fired their huge main engine to escape the moon's gravity and start that long, long fall back toward home.
Heating Earth's air was brutal. The outside bottom of their ship became blisteringly hot, but this vital heat shield protected those three tired men. Giant parachutes popped open in the sky, and they splashed safely into the ocean. They had actually pulled off the impossible, and the whole world celebrated their safe return. And they kept going. Apollo 12 pulled off this pinpoint landing right next to an old rover and brought pieces of it home. But then came the terrifying Apollo 13 accident. An oxygen tank exploded in deep space. They lost their air, they lost power, and the moon landing was instantly canceled. The three men had to move into the landing ship, treating it as a freezing, cold emergency shelter to survive. It was an insane survival story. Ground teams scrambled, coming up with these brilliant plans, using the moon's gravity to sling them around and fall home. When they finally survived that freezing, dangerous trip, their safe return felt like a true miracle. The later missions got to have a bit more fun and stay a lot longer. They unpacked these flat-packed electric moon cars right onto the dusty ground to travel far and find even older rocks. An astronaut hit a golf ball way out into the low gravity. Another dropped a feather and a hammer to watch them hit the dirt at the exact same time. On Apollo 17, a real scientist even sang happy songs while discovering surprising orange dirt. But then, it was time to go. They parked their moon car that final time, pointed the camera at their ship, and blasted off the surface forever. The whole program cost a massive amount of money, and people really wanted to focus on solving problems back down here on Earth. The giant rocket factories officially closed down, and the Great Moon Race was over. The payoff was absolutely huge, though. Those old moon rocks changed our science books forever, teaching us how planets originally formed. And the hard trip itself? It gave us immense knowledge, creating everyday inventions like much smaller, faster computer chips and way better tools for sick people. The trip honestly helped everyone on Earth. It just kind of blows my mind to think about. Those footprints are still sitting perfectly still on the quiet moon today. There's no rain to wash them away. They are just going to stay there for 1,000,000 years as this beautiful monument to human bravery. And those old giant rockets just sit in museums now, letting young builders with big, wide eyes dream about distant stars. It proved that impossible dreams are completely real when people do amazing things and work together. The journey out that far really just showed us our fragile home, teaching us to love our own planet more. It makes you wonder, if we could pull together to touch the moon back then, what impossible thing are we capable of doing next? Anyway, if you dug wandering through this story with me, definitely hit that like button, share this with someone who needs some wonder today, and subscribe for more. Catch you next time.